Okay, thank you. It's my great pleasure to welcome the film team of Nope. I'll start with Michael Abels, the film's composer. All right, Michael might be in the bathroom, but he's coming in a minute. I'll move on to Nicholas Monsour, the film's editor. Ian Cooper, the producer. Emerald herself, Keke Palmer. And last but not least, the writer, director, and producer, Jordan Peele.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you all for being with us. Thank you all for this film. I have questions for all of you, and I'm sure our audience does as well. And Jordan, we obviously have a lot to talk about with this series that you curated for us around Nope. So let's start with this film and go from there. I'll start with you. With Nope and with your previous features, I think you've shown yourself as a clear lover of genre, even as your films, I think, critique and, crisscross between those genres, and you always manage to, I think, pull something new out of that tension. With Nope, there's a clear joy, but also like a sense of mischief to the ways you're playing with, the conventions of horror, the Western, science fiction, even I think the Hollywood satire. But you do so in a way that I think never really alienates us, but still challenges our expectations and I think really asks us to think seriously about what it is we're looking at and responding to. And so, all that being said, I guess I'm curious, what made you make an alien invasion film as your third feature, and maybe more specifically, what was it about the UFO that seemed like the right conduit for the ideas that you wanted to explore in Nope?
Well, thank you very much for all that. One of the first, just to address the sort of genre bending element of it, and the fact that it resembles a lot of films, I think, but doesn't resemble quite any film. And I think early on, our costume designer Alex Bovaird, who's an incredible artist. She identified in the script, she called it spectral, a spectral movie, or it was a spectral, that it had a spectrum of ideas and flavors in it, and a lot of it came from how the movie was made and how it was conceived. And when I first made Get Out, for example, I knew I wasn't going to be able to have a movie that had a huge budget or anything, so I kind of, I crafted a little bit of a magic trick in that way. For this film, I had this wonderful privilege of feeling like I was going to get to make the movie that I wanted to make, and to try and push those boundaries. And that opened me up to a writing process that I think allowed the film to evolve into what it needed to be when it needed to be it. So I began writing, the first notion, as you say, the first hook was this idea of what if I could convince an audience they're watching Close Encounters of a Third Kind, but then they realize at some point they've been watching Jaws. And that, that's obviously a very reductive way to sort of put it, but that feat alone would create this entirely new experience and this entirely new film. And so that was the hook. And I knew I wanted to make a spectacle. So, I've talked about this before, but I knew I wanted to make a blockbuster, something that I wouldn't have been able to make a few years earlier. And so in trying to figure out what this film was, what I was trying to say, I really had to go inward and explore my relationship to this idea of spectacle, and why intrinsically in my plot was going to be baked in this notion that I said, at some point I thought, I can do this thing, so I must do it. I must go that. And that the blinding ambition, I couldn't let myself off the hook. So that's why the satire, that's why I think the Gordy and the Jupe plot line emerges as a commentary on myself, my own career, my own trauma within the career, or feelings of confusion and this kind of thing. And then I'm writing it in the midst of the George Floyd protests and the aftermath of the murder. And it was very clear that, as I had wanted to do, always wanted to do, I needed to make a movie about Black joy. I'm a Black horror movie maker in a lot of ways, and it's hard to pull that off always in this joyous manner. But I said, no, we got to do that with this one. So that's why, you have Nope is this weird, fucked up Frankenstein of film and things, and this amazing group of people, not only got it from the very beginning, but helped me pull off what I previously thought was impossible.
And as you kind of mentioned, your film is also about the business of spectacle, and it's obvious you're obviously dealing with the film industry in the present, but you're connecting it pretty directly to the history of cinema itself. And I'm curious, when did and maybe this is a question for you and Yeun, like when did Edward Muybridge sort of figure into this film?
So Yeun gave me a book. I don't remember what the book was called, but in the early phase, do you?
It was called.
We don't know. Erasure.
It was called.
That's called Erasure. We don't know the author of this book. But that's okay, because I think
It was a long time ago. It was fair to say it was a long time ago at this juncture.
and Ian Cooper is my producer. Who I would consider my closest creative ally and confidant, and he's really, the one here who, takes the reins on most things when I have to be sort of intensely focused on actors and script, and makes this movie happen. And so I have the privilege. He's also one of my best friends from high school, and a brilliant artist in his own right. So. I have the privilege of working with somebody who understands me on this core level, and so, really brilliantly sort of identified this Muybridge clip as something that was a cross section of some of the things that I was talking about wanting to make a film about.
And it was really uncanny too, because there was so much connectivity to Muybridge beyond even that first animal locomotion plate. Even the fact that Muybridge was a pioneer of sky replacement, which was what we ended up having to do in the film in terms of like creating a vast landscape where Muybridge added clouds to complete the long exposure that he couldn't have because of the cloud movement. So as we were reading this book that I cannot remember the name of, and so embarrassing, at Lincoln Center.
It was recording.
My parents are literally in this audience right now. But it was. I feel like a lot of times when we're working on ideas, something that we're reading or thinking about becomes to inform itself over and over again, and it becomes an indelible element. And so it felt like origin of the motion picture, the notion of trickery, of replacing the sky. We were like, okay, this is informing us that this needs to be a guiding principle.
A lot of crossover, and the thing that really, I think, stood out to me, of course, was this realization that this black jockey sort of didn't have, the black jockey that's on this clip, there's no trail of what happened to him or who he was. And so it became this sort of central, this focal point. The spirit of this film was this erased rider, that this idea that the very first star, or who could have been regarded as the very first star, has been discarded. And that became the spirit of the Haywood lineage. And this thing worth fighting for is being seen, being sort of participating in our rightful sort of place as part of the makers of dreams in this industry, even. And so that writer, and by the way, the whole concept is Otis Sr., and a character who, in many ways, Keke as Emerald is challenging, is the father, who was a sort of a shy. In my mind, this was, I don't really talk about this. This was a made-up story. The lineage to this original character may or may not really be connected. The father had a way of, changing the truth, but the idea is still pure. That this is an icon worth embracing and worth saving, and yeah.
Well, Keke, let's talk about Emerald. Well, first of all, congratulations on your New York Film Critics Circle Award. The recognition is a no-brainer. Your performance is incredible.
Thank you so much.
So I'm curious, how you got to this point to turning Emerald into this flesh and blood character. I mean, how did Jordan, describe this character to you? How did you, what did you respond to about Emerald when you first learned of the project, or how did you react to the story, in general?
Yeah, it was all very natural. He called me. He said, I want to share this with you. Kind of, lightly told me what the project was about. He didn't over push it, but he said, I want you to check out the script and check out this character. And I was just like so excited to obviously read it. And once I did, I thought I kind of knew where the movie was going. You have, okay, this brother, he's brooding, and then, okay, I'm kind of the jokester. And I thought I knew where the movie was going from that point. But as he so well put it, it is a bit of a Frankenstein. And I saw that my character was so much more than what would usually be on the surface structure for, any character's archetype. And that's when I started really getting into the knowledge, but also the originality of who, what makes Jordan Peele as a storyteller, as a director, as an artist, because it was all so intentional, what he was doing. And kind of the research that I was doing on the character with him was about all of those different things that he put in her, and what they represented at different times and how they tied into the storyline as a whole. And so we would just have these conversations, and sometimes they would be totally about script, and then sometimes they would be about his inspirations, or sometimes they'd be about me, you know what I mean, and how I connect to film as an actor, and my process of finding my own journey with this character that I can then inform him about. So it was a very personal, intimate relationship that he was open to having with me that I think helped me to define who Emerald was, and he helped me to define her with him, which was a really cool and unique experience. And then the journey of it for me was as it always is. I was extremely open and ready to be transformed. And Emerald is a character that I never have gotten a chance to play. It may have had elements of things that I could have tapped into before, but never did I have the opportunity to transition in a character over the course of a film the way that I was able to do with Emerald. I don't think that kind of character is really that common in general, let alone a black female. So for me, that was the greatest challenge, and the most exciting part was being able to bridge those different beats of transformation in one movie.
Well, Jordan, I'm curious, how you approach, character building and world building, in your writing and in your directing. I mean, I think your grasp on, mysteries in general is so calculated, and I think that has made, I think, fans of this film and your other films very eager to pull your film apart and sort of embrace those ambiguities and form their own theories. And so I'm curious, how much, I'm not asking for necessarily explanations to things, but how much, backstory do you give to your characters and to the alien when, you're in the writing stage? And is there a lot of subtraction afterward, or do you withhold a lot of information, before the film gets in the hands of your other collaborators?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of building these characters with everyone, primarily your actors, who at some point you really hope and want to become the expert on your characters, know them even better than you, so you can ask them how they want to react. But from the beginning to the end of the process, I think the story and the characters are being crafted. Michael has a big part in character and understanding how we're meant to feel. When OJ has just seen the UFO for the first time, and he comes back and Emerald is like, what happened? Michael transitions into this wonderful, magical, eerie, almost Amblin thing for a moment, where all of a sudden the childhood view of UFOs is alive, and you feel this brother and sister bond. And then you've got Nick down here, who is just one of the very, very great editors. And what we're doing in the post phase is just absolutely obsessing over these characters. I'd say they begin in some way to crack them. I have to understand who I am in the character. And that's the bond that I can have with someone like Keke. And I think when we started talking about Emerald, we're talking about, in terms of myself, we're talking about, the part of me that was on Key and Peele, the part of me that decided that had to be out in front of it all, and wanted that attention. And so we were both, I was a child actor. I was not a child star, but we sort of like, we went through, coming up through, selling yourself in a way as part of your identity is a real challenge I think we bonded on.
Absolutely. It was the most coolest experience. There will be moments where we're going through different parts of this script, this story, from when we first rehearsed to when we're actually on set, or to when we had an idea that happened that morning. And I would be listening, my head would be down, I'll be listening to what Jordan's saying. I'm like, man, this is deep. And I look up and just one little tear would be falling. I'm like, man, this brother's deep. You know what I mean? We're here.
I will cry when I am not afraid to cry as a director.
And he's chill. He'll be like, and that's what happens. And tears are falling. You're like, are you all right? You know what I mean? But he keeps going and he's like, yeah, so that's the thing. And then he just walks out.
Well, you mentioned, Michael, let's turn to the score, which I think is so important in, I think, orchestrating the film's tonal shifts, moving from horror to, in one scene, to evoking the Western in another, and so on. But it's also, it's so carefully measured in how it builds dread over the course of the film. So I'm, this is your third time working with Jordan. I'm curious if you can just talk about your initial conversations about the film, what you sort of wanted.
Kaleidoscopic, that was the word. It wasn't spectral, it was kaleidoscopic. That was, and it describes your...
I wasn't going to remind you.
Later.
I was going to let you remember.
Yeah, I'm curious if you want to talk about, your early conversations, if you had sort of creative reference points as well.
Well, Jordan's been great about letting me read the script when he feels ready to share it, and it's really great that you feel like you're one of the first eyes on something really special. And he really seeks feedback from people that the feedback, I think, is something that feeds his creative process. But I feel like, first thing is I really want, because he's so interested in different genres, I'm really wanting to step up to whatever he wants to do with that genre. And I think in your introduction, you were great about saying, but some of it is loving, and some of it is satirical, some of it's biting, and music can really attenuate how that's perceived. And so I always want to make sure that we talk a lot about, how much of it is satire, or how, just what percentage of homage and parody and all these different things should be in the music, and that affects our conversations a lot. And also with this film, and there's certain parts of the music that are horror or suspenseful and tense, and there's some that are Western and very much old school classic Western. There's parts of the score that are an action adventure, finally, when we get to it. And it's important that all those things feel like they all have a place that they meet. And there's also there's really the relationship of OJ and Emerald, and how warm and familial, and the representation of their heritage, and the music helps us feel that bond between them, even when externally it looks like they're not getting along. And so we talk a lot about those dynamics, and so. At that point, then he doesn't tell me I want to hear this really in a music way, because he's really good about about giving you instructions that inspire you to do whatever your best work is.
Man, that's so true.
Right?
It's really a hard skill, but he does it really
well.
well.
He does it really well. So, and sometimes that's really and it can come in the form of something. Now I should give examples. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but it can be really heady, like the way I've just been explaining it, or it can be a joke of something. I can't think of one from Nope right now, but one from Get Out. There's a scene where there's a video, and actually one of the things I enjoy doing is the source music. A lot of times I'll do the source music for Jordan's films because it's an inside joke for all of us. And so I did in this very, very tragically made video, there's tragic music to the video that's been added. And that's actually the theme from Get Out, but done in a very happy, nice way that you would never notice it. But before I did it, Jordan just says, it has to sound like a really bad ED commercial. And for whatever reason, I thought I knew what that should sound like. So, but that's the example of the feedback he gives you that, as an artist, will inspire you, because you can how many ways can you take that, and yet you feel like you know exactly what to do. So for each of the genres, sometimes he would give me a hilarious example of something and sometimes he speaks in terms of what the audience is supposed to be feeling, and that's a thing he does that's unique among directors I've worked with, where he doesn't just say, the character's feeling this. He'll say, this is the point where the audience should be saying, and suddenly he embodies every moviegoer you've ever seen and what they should be saying in their mind. They'll be saying, oh no, you shouldn't be doing that, or what's going on here? He knows exactly what he wants the audience to be feeling. And so therefore, I understand what that we're all of us are on the same field to deliver an experience for the audience. And he's really good about helping me see what each scene and what each moment is designed to do for the audience experience.
This thing about, the trusting your collaborators, and like a lot of people think that film is about, the director's vision means that they know what the movie is going to look like, and that's kind of like a false lead, because it's not that. You know what you need out of the film. You know what you want the audience to feel. You know what you want them to experience. But I think when it's really working, when you're really making a great movie, you're putting a lot of trust in these fine people that you've gathered. Hoyte van Hoytema, the great cinematographer who unfortunately can't be here tonight, but just extended what was possible in film, what was possible for me to do in film, what was possible for me to conceive of. And you realize when you're making a movie, you're trying to capture a feeling, like I said, but it's not even the movie you're trying to make isn't something you can conceive of. If you're really if you're really getting the people together that are going to watch your back and are going to be doing their best work that they've ever done. When I'm working with Nick, for example, there's my principle of working is essentially that I have to feel like there's not one movie here, that there's an infinite amount of movies here. And there's an infinite amount of ways to get it wrong, too. But that, the idea that there's one movie here is very limiting. And we end up finding one movie. But the pathway to get there involves a lot of, for example, him going on fantastical editing explorations.
Yeah, I'm curious how
that may come back into a circle, and then we're back at square one. But we've learned something. And so anyway, I just want to highlight, because the amount of work that Nick does is tremendous, and you see it all here. But all the work that you don't see is also on a different level of what he's sort of sifted through and figured out for me.
Yeah, Nick, I'm curious, like, how you worked with Jordan on the edit, and like how you sort of saw the writing phase carry into that stage of the production. I'm just curious, what kind of challenges you were sort of faced with as the editor, and sort of what new ideas you might have sort of discovered at that, stage of the production.
Yeah, well, it's really fun to talk about it with you guys all here, because it is, I think, like everybody says, working with Jordan on one of his movies is pretty unlike any other movie. I mean, there's all the same technical stuff applies, but creatively, it's I truly mean it. It's not just because you're sitting here, but it's the most creatively rewarding, and yet it's like it's because you're safe in an environment and with an idea and with a set of creative vision that will it's going somewhere great the whole time, but you're free to pitch many things, and I'm always trying to get on the inside of what is inspiring the decisions for everybody, for the actors, for Jordan, for the set designers, to understand the logic, because editing is a weird thing where film is so much more than what you can describe it. As anybody who's tried to write or read a film review knows, you can't quite pin down what's great or bad about something in words. And yet that's what you have to do when you're working with somebody, is you kind of have. So we have this other language where we can just throw ideas back and forth. And as long as you trust each other enough, I guess, there is that freedom where you get to go down a lot of experimental avenues. And sometimes, you just learn, well, that's my impulse and that's not relevant here. Or that is relevant because you can triangulate the good idea that's right through 5 wrong ideas, and that takes trust and time and energy, but is so much fun, because I don't know if it's how you think about it, but I feel like it's such a treat to work on something where it's alive the whole time, where there wasn't just this idea that was perfect in a director filmmaker's head, and then everything's just a series of disappointments as it's not perfect after that. Like, oh, that actor didn't quite say it the way I wanted, or that. But instead, that it's an idea that then gets made alive by all the contributions. And then it's alive the whole time, and we're feeding it and watering it and, like, trying to not get swallowed by it. And it's it's a great process where you get to, in a way, sort of, it's like being in a writer's room, kind of, the edit room, I feel like, where you get to pitch ideas in a way, and yet you also have this very concrete thing in the footage that tells you what it wants to be in a lot of ways. So almost like adapting something where you have this source material and then anyway, it's just an incredibly creative process that if somebody like Jordan is confident enough in their ideas that they can, some people get very swayed if you show them something, then they get confused and they're not sure. Jordan, you can show him anything and he's like, no. Or, oh, well, that's not it, but now I can think of another thing that maybe is it. And so it feels like, it's, it obviously is more work than painting by numbers, but I don't think anybody who really wants to be involved in something, that you feel is important or really interesting, that isn't the way you do that. So
it's also rarely no. That's the best. One of the best parts of the process is that even if you've created something you spent all weekend making, and then you show us, it's so rare that it's just like, it's like it gets digested, it gets discussed, it gets broken apart, it gets reborn in other iterations of exploration. I think that's the part that's mind-blowing to watch happen,
That's cool. Like Michael said too, like the joke is like often part of it, where like we find things through the humor a lot of the time.
Yeah, I love movies and man, I love movies, bruh. What happened? No, I think that I truly believe something that may not be true, but I believe that a single person can make a really great piece of art, but I do believe the old Obama-ism, I guess, that what we can do together is greater than what we can do alone. And see, I mean, I was lame, right? No, but no, it's true. I mean, you can. I can write a script, but all of a sudden, when you add all of these people who are masters of their craft to that script, you have something completely transcendent. You have an illusion that can, that people who have people seen this film before? Has anyone? Yeah, I mean, look. People coming back to see the same film because they were taken somewhere, and whether they liked where they were taken or not, because some parts of the movie are uncomfortable and disorienting, but we come back for this thing that is impossible for somebody to make, and it is impossible for somebody to make that. You need 100 people. To do something like that, and that's why I love moving. That's why I could never, I've always been fascinated with film, is because it's the collection of everybody's dream come true in a way. You hope in that process.
I mean, and I think this film is an absolute testament to the industry and the film's capacity for collaboration. I mean, we're running short on time, but I do want to kind of touch on the series that you have curated around this film. And I'm curious about, the films that you have selected. Were these films that you had your crew here, watch in anticipation? Are you all familiar with the films? Did you watch any?
There's several of these films that have probably been referenced in several moments. Certainly with each of these collaborators, there's a different level of understanding what this list is about. And what we did watch with the crew, we watched King Kong before the film. And King Kong was, it was something where I wanted to show the crew a film that was just of the utmost technical awe. Just unbelievable. When I sat down to watch the film, I was just amazed because I was thinking about being ambitious technically and thinking in terms of this groundbreaking movie, and just trying to replicate what they did now, to me, seems impossible. And so that was inspiring. So I wanted to inspire the crew, but also it is so very much about this idea of selling spectacle. It's about movie making. It's about, and it is marred with this exploitative and offensive take on exotic masculinity, and this this tribe, and so the movie is just a masterpiece spectacle about and of exploitation in itself, and so in many ways it's a spirit animal, no pun intended.
Well, you also selected quite a few Corey Feldman films, and I'm curious with your motivation behind that, but especially on this final film, The Birthday, which, as far as we're aware, has not really seen a U.S. theatrical premiere. I'm curious to know how you guys saw it.
We went to Corey Feldman's house.
That did happen.
And he showed, and I had invited him to this to see Nope, to the premiere. And part of the connection, it's hard for me to truly put into words, but you probably already understand some of it. And it does in many ways connect to this idea of the vanishing spectacle and this lineage of the writer in Hollywood. And how I get from that original black jockey to Corey Feldman, teen icon, white teen icon, at this very specific time, who then made this film that we saw, which we thought was extremely magnetic, extremely cinematic, a real what the fuck did I just watch film, starring Corey Feldman from 2004 that never came out. This missing film. And so, realizing how much, once again, how much intrinsic DNA this film shares with mine, I built a little bit of a run to tell that story of the missing jockey, in part through Corey.
We have some time for audience questions. You can take your question right here. I think we have a microphone, so just hold your question for a minute.
Hi. First of all, congratulations to all of the crew. I love this movie so much. My question was about sort of the design of Jean Jacket, because, like you said, it starts out with this very stereotypical UFO, and it's sort of looming in the background, almost like kaiju-esque, where it's you dread when it comes on. But then by the end of the film, where it sort of unfurls and you see it in all its glory, to me, I didn't find that scary at all. I found it kind of beautiful. So I didn't know if that was something that you intended to do, where I should be dreading this and I'm misreading it, or I was just wondering how you came up with that, how you came to that final design.
You are Jean Jacket's perfect prey. When I was originally conceiving the animal, really trying to do all the things that we don't see enough in these movies, where you try and conceive of something we're not necessarily picturing when we picture an alien. And one of the first places I went was underwater, which of course isn't completely novel in itself, but I was looking at the properties of these animals that are able to exist in a sort of three-dimensional experience like that, the way Jean Jacket would fly throughout space and exist in that space, and say, okay, we've got something that relates to air the way so many creatures we know relates to water. And so animals like the cuttlefish, on planet Earth, the peacock, there's certain animals that use mesmerization as a primary tool. And so Jean Jacket, from the very beginning, we knew, and had many amazing artists working on Jean Jacket, but from the very beginning, I knew it had to be a creature that was a vision, and that you can't look away from, and it's got you when you do look at it.
We can really just take one more question. We'll go right there.
Hello. Thank you for that movie, by the way. That was an incredible film. So a lot of people say that each movie, a lot of filmmakers say that each movie that they make is like a lesson. So, from someone who came from like, comedy and screenwriting, what have you learned through the making of each of your films, and especially Nope? Like, what are some lessons that you've learned through that process?
Wow, that's deep. What have I learned, man? It's a great question. I'm going a lot through this process right now as I try to figure out what the next project is, and I think one thing that I've learned about myself, just to be real and vulnerable with this group. This stays in the room, right? Okay. No, I think that no. I think as my life develops in this amazing direction where so many of my dreams have come true, I have to continue to push at ways of understanding myself and challenging myself. This breakthrough that I was talking about here, where I realized in this really big way, every character has to be has to somehow be represent a flaw in myself that I see in myself, and kind of work through that. The personal nature of a film was this was my most personal film so far, and so I feel like I have to kind of continue with that instinct to ask myself tough questions. That's it.
Well, thank you, everyone. We have another sold-out 9 p.m. screening that's supposed to start right now.
Oh.
So,
All right,
that's
everyone.
all we have time for.
We gotta go.
But thank you all so much.